Good day. In this video, Group 1 will be presenting about our macroeconomics assignment, and the topic is the impact of global health crisis on Malaysia's economic growth during the COVID-19 pandemic. Group 1 consists of 5 members, and the above shows the name and metric number of our group members. My name is Lim Shui, and today I'll be presenting about the background and thorough discussion on the impact of COVID-19 on Malaysia's economic growth. The COVID-19 pandemic started in early 2020 and quickly turned into a global health and economic crisis. To slow down the virus, countries like Malaysia enforced strict measures like lockdowns, travel bans, and border closures. In Malaysia, the government introduced the movement control orders in March 2020. While these actions were important to protect public health, they caused major disruptions in economic activity. As a result, Malaysia's GDP fell by 5.6% in 2020, marking the sharpest decline since the 1998 Asian financial crisis. The services sector, which makes up over half of the economy, declined by 5.5%, especially in tourism, hospitality, and retail. The manufacturing sector also shrank as export drops and supply chain broke down. Other sectors like agriculture, construction, and mining also saw negative growth. On the social side, the unemployment rate rose to 5.3%, and many businesses, especially MSMEs, shut down. Household incomes fell and poverty increased from 5.6% to 8.45% in just 1 year. Informal workers and gig economy earners were the most affected. In 2021, Malaysia began to recover with a GDP growth of 3.1% as vaccines rolled out and restriction eased. However, challenges such as rising public debt, widening inequality, and a digital divide still remain. At the same time, the crisis sped up the digital transformation, changing how Malaysians work and do businesses. In conclusion, COVID-19 had a deep impact on Malaysia's economy and society. Moving forward, we must focus on building resilience, reducing inequality, and adapting to a digital future.
Thank you, Shui. My name is Ibe. I will be presenting the government policies that had been implemented regarding the impact of COVID-19 on Malaysia's economic growth. The government responded with the Prihatin package. It included cash aid through BPN, wage subsidies for employees earning under 4,000 ringgit, and support for students, elderly, and vulnerable groups. Loan deferments and a 6-month moratorium help ease financial pressures. To keep businesses afloat, the government introduced 5 billion ringgit in SME loans, tax deferrals, and microcredit at 2% interest with no collaterals. EPF contributions were restructured, and bank offers moratoriums to improve business cash flows. Penjana focused on jobs through hiring incentive and upskilling. Permai, launched in 2021, expanded vaccination efforts, continued wage subsidies, distributed food basket, and enhanced support for online businesses and healthcare services. Pemulai offered more cash aid and grants for micro businesses. Vaccination supply was boosted to cover 130% of the population. Meanwhile, Bank Negara lowered the overnight policy rate to 1.75% to encourage borrowing and stimulate the economy.
So now I am Li Pei Fang. I would like to present about the comparison between Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore, focusing on how the global COVID-19 pandemic impact their economies. We will discuss it based on 6 key factors. Let's start with GDP, Gross Domestic Product. In this area, Singapore performed the best. Its GDP grew almost 24% in 2021, thanks to the strong demand in electronic and precision engineering. The country's high-tech and diversified economy helped it recover quickly. So the next is Malaysia with a 10.78% increase in GDP. This was mainly due to the government's Fifth of Mind Act package, which supported small business during lockdown. And for Thailand have the weakest GDP growth, only 1.16%. This was because the tourist industry, one of its biggest economy drivers, collapsed due to travel restriction. Okay, next let's look at Industry Production Index (IPI). Again, Singapore lead the way. Its IPI grew in both 2020 and 2021, driven by strong export in semiconductors and medical techs. And next, Malaysia IPI dropped sharply in 2020 but recovered well in 2021, growing by 7.4% as factories reopened. And lastly, Thailand IPI fell 5.0% in 2020 and only rose slightly in 2021. This is because many factories have to close due to the Delta wave, so which slow recovery. Finally, let's talk about the unemployment. Singapore and Malaysia both had unemployment rate around 4.6% in 2021. This is because young unemployment was a big issue, especially in Malaysia. But government in both countries introduced wage subsidies and support programs. Lastly, for Thailand, its unemployment rate looks low, just around 1%, but it is misleading because over half of the Thailand workers are in informal jobs like street vendors or farming. So many of them were not counted into the official data. So far, in my conclusion, based on these three key factors, Singapore have the stronger overall recovery due to its advanced and diversified economy. Malaysia recovered moderately well, helped by strong government support and export. And the Thailand seems stable on paper, but in reality is heavily relies on tourism and informal works left many people vulnerable. So that's all for me. Thank you. I will pass to Tian for discuss more about the comparison between Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand.
Thank you, Pei Fang. My name is Ong Qian, and now I'm going to continue the comparison between three countries, which is Malaysia, Thailand, and Singapore, by focusing on inflation rate, net export, healthcare expanding during the COVID-19 pandemic. First, in terms of inflation rate, all three countries experienced deflation in 2020. Malaysian inflation rate was negative 1.14%, Thailand was negative 0.85%, and Singapore was negative 0.18%. This was due to lower consumer demand and falling global oil price. In 2021, inflation rose as economy reopened. Malaysian inflation reached 2.48%, driven by higher fuel price and easier access to credit. Singapore inflation rate climbed to 2.30% after reopening under the Living with COVID strategy. Besides, Thailand inflation rate increased more modestly to 1.23%, following policy like easing housing loan rules. Each country adopt different tools to bring inflation back to the healthy levels. Besides, regarding net export, in 2021, Singapore has the stronger performance with net export rising by $47.5 billion thanks to its free trade agreement and strong electronic export. Malaysia also shows solid growth with net export increasing from $21.49 and 27.03 billion, mainly driven by palm oil and rubber products. However, Thailand faced a small trade deficit of about $0.21 billion as its energy and tech import outpaced export. This reflects difference in trade structures and export competitiveness among them. Lastly, all three countries increased their healthcare spending in 2021 to fight COVID-19 pandemic. Singapore spent the most, using national reserves and support package to manage the crisis. Malaysia focused on vaccination effort, especially in rural areas, while Thailand invests more in medical staff and isolation facility. These numbers show the different priorities. Singapore focused on public health and fiscal support, Malaysia on vaccine access, and Thailand on workforce and infrastructure. In summary, although these three countries face the same issue, their responses to it were quite different. This difference highlights how each country adopts to the crisis based on its institutional strengths and national priorities. Thank you.
Next, my name is Liu Penny and I will be presenting the final part of our group assignment, titled Reflection on the Impact of COVID-19 on Malaysia's Economic Growth. This session is based on our group's own opinion and reflection after analyzing the data and government responses. First, we believe the pandemic exposed Malaysia over dependence on vulnerable sectors like tourism, manufacturing, and construction. For example, tourism dropped sharply from 26 million arrivals to just 4.3 million in 2020. Next is show the weakness in our social protection system. Informal workers didn't have access to wage subsidy or unemployment support, and poverty rose from 5.6% to 8.4%. The pandemic also highlighted digital inequality. Many rural students struggle with online learning and small businesses have trouble shifting to e-commerce. In terms of governance, frequent change to SOP created confusion among businesses. This showed the need for a more centralized and data-driven crisis response system. Moving forward, we think Malaysia should focus on reform and resilience. This includes investing in green technology, digital innovation, and reducing income inequality through better healthcare, education, and regional development. In conclusion, our group believes that Malaysia must turn this crisis into a long-term opportunity for structural reform and inclusive growth. Thank you.
That's all from Group 1 presentation. Thank you.